Hi, welcome back to Painting Trafalgar. It's now 2022, and I've been doing this for a year or more. I got to apologize because I kind of just went away. The summer came and I stopped painting indoors, and I worked outside, and I did a bunch of outside paintings. But anyway, the Battle of Trafalgar never really went too far away from my mind, but I have... Now that's really a lie. Compared to the way Battle of Trafalgar was foremost in my mind, it's now faded a lot. You know, there was a point where I have a Battle of Trafalgar Facebook page, and as the anniversary in October came around, I started focusing on that and doing a lot of, talking about the significance and trying to educate people about the battle. Those who were interested and wanted to join that club and click on it. I had a couple of Facebook groups. That's the only Trafalgar-based one or sailing ship-based one. I've got a ship model one. I'm not sure. It's not like I'm getting a lot of followers and stuff. It's more about me, just like this is. I'm talking to you, but I'm really talking to myself, and I'm expressing the things that are going through my mind. And when I was young, my mom always said, "Oh, you should have a diary, you should write all this stuff down." And I never did, but I always felt like she was right, that I should be writing it all down. So having this kind of a video blog, that's getting probably as close as I'm going to get to doing a diary, Anyway, this painting has not featured in my Painting Trafalgar videos. This one existed, but I wasn't working on it. And it sat unfinished because I was just I needed the time away from it. But it hung on my bedroom wall, so I was literally looking at it all the time. I'd look at it, last thing at night and first thing in the morning. And I was never really as happy as I wanted to be. There were parts about this picture that I really liked a lot. This is the HMS Pickle. And she's in front of the burning... Achilles? The Achille? So it's the end of the battle, the sun's setting, we're getting a little bit of a sunset. And the historical facts tell us that the Pickle did sweep in to try to pick up survivors. And then legend has it that there was a woman in the water that they picked up too. She had been on board the French ship. And that's one of those anecdotes of the history of the battle that get repeated all the time, is the legend of this woman and the Pickle picking her up. And it gets quoted a lot because it sort of touches people and they feel like, oh, it humanizes the battle and stuff. I would not bet money that there weren't even more women at the battle, but that's the one that there's references to, the surviving accounts from firsthand people who were there. So reproducing the Pickle took a lot of time and energy because it wasn't really... a vessel that had a lot of consensus. There's a reproduction HMS Pickle that's out there that's very similar in size and appearance, and the people associated with that project insist that it's a perfect reproduction of the Pickle. But their motivation is to have it be a good representation of the Pickle. I feel like there's not a lot of good information that you could say, this is something I know about HMS Pickle that's perfectly outlined in all the data that we have. And in other words, she was purchased by the Royal Navy. She wasn't built by the Royal Navy, so there's no draught that was done before her construction. And she was built, I think she was built in the Caribbean. I might have that wrong, but she wasn't built on a Navy yard, and so there wasn't the standardization. There's some paintings from contemporary 1805, 1806. There's a guy named Dodd, D-O-D-D. He was a painter who did a couple of paintings of the battle. And he is said to have, interviewed people who were at the battle. So his paintings of Trafalgar get, to the head of the line, because he's more like a closer you're going to get to an original source. A historian wants to have a primary source, and if not, the secondary source. And so he's like a secondary source because he was in touch with the primary sources. He talked to these people after the battle. So he's got a picture of the Pickle, and to me it doesn't look convincing. And it doesn't look like the Pickle that the consensus of today is settled on. In my view, she looks more modern than this pickle. Like, to me, this pickle looks kind of beamy and apple-cheeked and not very sleek and an archaic-looking rig. Whereas the Dodd pickle, to me, looks just, in general, more pointy. She looks like she's got like a clipper bow. But having said that, it's a tiny little image in a bigger painting. It's not a painting of the pickle. The pickle just appears in a larger painting. Anyway, that has fueled some of the issues with me trying to finish this painting. It's been trying to hammer down the shape of the ship. And I had, up until just a few months ago, the sails on this were lower, and they were lower here too. So the feet of the sails, the foots of the sails, the bottom part of the sails were really close to the deck, which they kind of would be if the boom is swung out a little bit. Then visually, your view of the deck is being impaired. But it really looked like the figures that I had on deck would have to be like stooping down to get under, which maybe they did, but I don't. Yeah, that's the kind of a thing I don't think the historical record's helping us with. But I can't see, for livable purposes, having a ship where you're in danger of getting hit with the boom all the time. That is a problem on actual sailboats, but not on big schooners. And she's not a big schooner. She's kind of small. And I'm showing her with 2 guns visible, but there's 8 guns, I think, or something like that. Like, there's the number of guns that she's rated as having is how she's most often depicted. But there's a direct quote from somebody at the battle describing Pickle with her 2 guns visible like a pair of Wellington boots. So to me that looks like they had pierced the hull to take more cannon. But I can also picture in the life of the vessel the people in control of her and her master and the captain would decide they don't need all those cannon for their mission. Their job was not to really go attack other vessels of war. She was more of a dispatch vessel, dispatch vessel, like running errands, which is what she was famous for, because she was the one that brought the news of the battle back to England, because she was the fastest ship in the English fleet at the end of the battle. So I've depicted her with just 2 guns, and I'm sure there's going to be people who are going to be like, that isn't a thing. It says right here she had this many guns. And yeah, maybe she did at one point, but I with that eyewitness account saying that he's describing 2 guns that look like a pair of Wellington boots, to me that's not ambiguous at all. That's a guy who saw the ship saying that he saw her with 2 guns. The other issue that people might disagree about, or actually I kind of cause a disagreement. I kind of write in and I say, like, well, what do you think about a martingale? A martingale is this piece of wood that would stick down right here and be about this big. It's also known as a Dolphin Striker. It was invented and started being implemented on sailing ships late in the 1700s, like in the 1790s or something like that. So it really was a newfangled device. And prior to that date, you never saw them because they hadn't been invented yet, which is kind of amazing. Because what they do is they support all this rigging out here beyond this point. They give it like an extra bit, like the rigging, in other words, would come from here and go to the point of the martingale and then come back. And that strengthens and stiffens this whole area more than if the line just came straight back as I'm depicting it here. So you can imagine like a spreader on a modern yacht. They'll have a spreader sticking out so that the stay and the backstays can support the topmasts better, or the areas above the hounds. Is that what they call them? Yeah. Anyway, so I left that out, and you can find examples of ships photographed in the dawn of photography, but much after the Battle of Trafalgar, that still don't have the martingale. So not showing the martingale, to me, doesn't seem like I've committed some kind of history crime. That's just more of like my personal idea of how things would have shaken out. Like this ship wasn't a regular Royal Navy ship. I think that the introduction of the martingale, they'd probably focus on ships that had larger head rigs and mandate them there. And then maybe later she gets a refit, they'll eventually get around to putting in the martingale. But I think it's totally plausible she doesn't have one at this stage in her career. Thanks for listening this long, because I know this is like just a dumb deep dive into aspects of this ship. And I should be talking about the painting. The painting comes from this idea. I saw this lurid painting that was like it looked like a book jacket illustration for like a lurid sailing adventure novel that showed like ships in combat, and it was just like, it was almost kind of like cartoonish, comic booky, where the ships were really close together and superimposed each in front of each other, shooting back and forth. And I thought, oh, why not? You know, I want to think outside the box of the composition. The traditional thing would just be to have a ship here and have a ship here and show the smoke and they're shooting at each other. But I like this idea of superimposing a larger ship behind a smaller ship and having the depth that way. And when I jumped into this painting, I was so pleased with that idea, and I was really happy with how it was working out. But I found that I hadn't done as much planning as I should have done. You know, like I say, I had these proportions wrong. And then getting the water right was still like, you know, I still struggle trying to get the water right. And one of my plans for today is to actually change the water here at the top, because I think it's wrong. Now, I think I'd go back and I wouldn't have the pickle so squarely broadside on. You know, in other words, there's a straight line running along the deck, and it's perfectly parallel to the picture plane. You know, she's just like in a flat space. And I think it would be better if she was pointing this way or pointing out that way. It would make it more dynamic. You know, when I look at other paintings, I see, you know, the people who are putting ships just square to the picture plane are like Antonio Jacobson, who did these ship portraits. They're very formal, but they're almost like mug shots, where they just want to present them in profile so that you can see the, like, more of the clinical details of it, and not, you know, the goal of the painting wasn't to represent a scene into which the ship is sailing. The goal was to present the ship so that no aspect of the ship would be a mystery to you. It would all be like really plainly explained, and that's, I think, the wrong approach for a painting like this. So I think I like the idea of the burning ship in the background, but the way the pickle is, I really wish I'd kind of like, I think you know what I'm saying. Anyway, I think that's enough for now. I don't know how many of these I'm going to do. You know, I did, what have I got, like 10? You can tell me, right? Because you can see at the bottom of the screen there's a number of how many videos I've got. I like doing them. I think I like hearing myself talk. I like playing it back. Like later I'll do the dishes and I'll listen to this myself talking. But I don't know if that's good for the viewer. And I still haven't figured out any kind of editing software solution, so I just shoot these raw and upload them without any kind of post-processing of any kind, and it probably shows. And you know, there's a lot of these that I tape and then throw away because there's a mistake in them. And if I just figured out some editing software, I'd be able to just cut and, you know. But I haven't, you know, I don't know. Me and computers. I think I need a new computer too. Anyway, I think that's enough for now, right? I sure might have been rambling. Thanks.